All right, let's get right into it. We're going to be diving deep into the incredible work of Dr. Gabor Maté. And his work really asks this one kind of radical question. What if our physical illnesses, the things we think are just random biological bad luck, what if they're actually our bodies speaking a language of stress, of emotion, and trauma that most of us have completely forgotten how to hear? This quote, wow, it's just heartbreaking. It comes from a patient of Dr. Maté's named Mary, something she said to him near the very end of her life. And these words, as we're about to see, they are literally the key to unlocking this profound, powerful connection between our life stories and our physical health. So, Mary was diagnosed with something called scleroderma. Now, this is a really severe autoimmune disease where the body's own connective tissues start to harden. It's almost as if the body is slowly turning to stone. It's an incredibly painful, debilitating condition, and for Mary, it was ultimately fatal. Now, of course, Mary's doctors, they treated her physical symptoms. They gave her medicine for the inflammation, the pain, the tissue damage. They did everything by the book, but the disease just kept getting worse, relentlessly. It was this huge medical puzzle, and here's the kicker. No one was asking about the life of the person who was actually inside that body.
And that really brings us to the central question of all of this. What if the real root cause of Mary's illness wasn't just hiding in her cells, but was actually written in the pages of her biography? I mean, is it possible? Could a lifetime of experience, of buried emotion, literally reshape our biology and show up as a disease?
So one day, Dr. Maté just invited Mary to talk, to just tell her story. And what came out was a lifetime of pain she had kept completely hidden. She talked about a childhood filled with abuse and abandonment. Can you even imagine? At just 7 years old, she was hiding in an attic, physically shielding her younger sisters from her fighting foster parents, just soaking up all that fear herself. And she carried that enormous weight in total silence for her entire life.
Mary's story is really the heart of Dr. Maté's core idea, that when we can't, or maybe when we just won't, consciously deal with our pain and trauma, our bodies are forced to carry the load. They're forced to speak for us. And from this point of view, an illness can actually be the body's way of screaming no when our voice can't or won't.
What's really fascinating is just how controversial this idea is in mainstream medicine. When Dr. Maté first wrote about Mary's case, a rheumatology specialist publicly just shot him down, said the whole idea was unscientific, based on inexperience. And that right there, it just shows you the deep, deep divide in how we're taught to look at illness.
And that divide, it has a name. It's rooted in a philosophy called dualism. It's basically the idea that the mind, your thoughts, your feelings, your experiences, is totally separate from the body. Your cells, your organs, your tissues. So medicine treats the body, psychology treats the mind, and the two almost never meet. But Dr. Maté argues this is a huge, profound mistake.
So, if the mind and body aren't separate, then how in the world do they connect? How can something as intangible as an emotion create something as real and physical as a disease? Well, the bridge between those two worlds is the science of stress.
Believe it or not, there's a whole scientific field dedicated to this. It's called psychoneuroimmunology. It is a mouthful, I know, but if you break it down, it's just a fancy way of saying our psyche, our mind, directly talks to and influences our nervous system and our immune system. This is the hard science that proves this mind-body connection isn't just some new age idea. Okay, so here's how it works. When your brain perceives a threat, and this part is absolutely crucial, it doesn't matter if that threat is a tiger about to pounce or a painful childhood memory. The brain triggers the exact same chemical cascade. It activates your stress axis, which floods your body with hormones like cortisol. This puts your whole system on high alert, changing everything from your inflammation levels to how your immune cells behave. It's a brilliant system for short-term survival, but when that stress becomes chronic, when it's switched on all the time, it's just devastating for our health.
The actual father of stress research, a guy named Hans Selye, he came to this really startling conclusion. He said that for modern humans, the most important and the most damaging stressors we face are emotional. It's the chronic anxiety, the repressed anger, the unspoken grief. These are the things that keep that stress response running 24/7, just slowly, quietly wearing our bodies down.
So as Dr. Maté worked with more and more patients, he started to see this disturbing pattern, a kind of personality style that was incredibly common among his patients with chronic illnesses. It's a coping mechanism that, on the surface, looks really admirable, but it comes at a terrible hidden cost. And this is the deep contradiction he kept finding. Outwardly, these are the helpers, right? The compulsive caregivers, the people who always put others first and can never seem to say no. But internally, it's a completely different story. Their own needs are totally ignored, their personal boundaries are all blurry, and all their natural anger has nowhere to go. And all of that creates a state of permanent, hidden physiological stress.
A patient named Lois just put it perfectly. This whole pattern often gets wired into us in childhood. A kid learns pretty fast that their safety, their value, it all depends on getting approval from the adults around them. And how do you get approval? You learn to push down your own needs and feelings to make everybody else happy.
And just look at this quote from Alan, an engineer who had cancer. All somebody has to do is ask me, and they got me. It's a complete inability to protect his own energy, his own boundaries, and his realization that learning to say no was essential for his survival. I mean, it's just so incredibly powerful. He literally saw it as a choice between pleasing other people and living. And here's the other side of that same coin, from a patient named Melvin. It's this conscious belief that expressing anger is dangerous, that it just makes everything worse. So this vital, healthy emotion, which is really just a biological signal that a boundary has been crossed, it gets shoved down again and again and again, where it just festers and poisons the body's internal environment.
So, what's the big takeaway here? Is this about blaming people for being sick? Absolutely not. It is the exact opposite of that. It's actually about empowerment. It's about finding a new path to healing through a new kind of awareness, something Maté calls the power of negative thinking.
And we have to be crystal clear about the distinction on this slide. Blame is useless, it's cruel, and it's scientifically wrong. But responsibility, that's empowering. And think of it this way, responsibility. It's having the ability to respond with awareness to what our bodies and our lives are telling us, instead of just unconsciously reacting all the time. So what is this power of negative thinking? It has nothing to do with being a pessimist. It's actually about the courageous willingness to look at what is not working in our lives. It's having the guts to ask the hard questions. What pain have I been ignoring? Which relationships are causing me chronic stress? And where am I not being true to myself?
And this, right here, might be the most important message of all. Real healing requires giving ourselves permission to feel our so-called negative emotions, especially our anger. Honoring your anger isn't about lashing out at people, it's about listening to its message. It is a profound act of self-care. It's your body's alarm system saying, hey, something here is wrong and it needs to change.
Which leaves us with this final and I think most crucial question. Dr. Maté's work powerfully suggests that our bodies are constantly communicating with us through feelings, through intuition, and yes, even through symptoms and disease. So the question isn't whether your body is talking. The real question is, are you willing to listen?